Adam Lane Smith, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining us again.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So, what I wanted to do today is I pulled 26 tweets from your Twitter, and I wanted to just go over them. And I'm not sure if we'll get through all 26, but let's try. We'll try to get through it in an hour. But so the first one I have here is anxious people crave reassurance, avoidance craves silence. Together, they call it chemistry.
So yes, this is attachment theory right here. Anxiously attached people are craving essentially the addiction of oxytocin from the connection they get and the attention, which floods them with dopamine, which rewards them. So they're addicted to intermittent reinforcement, just like a gambling addict is addicted to punching that button on the slot machine. Avoidantly attached people crave dopamine for the first 5 to 7 months of a relationship, then their receptors burn out on that person, and now they want to step away and not have that deep level intimacy because it feels abrasive. So they want disconnection, and they just want to try to find dopamine some other way. That's the cycle, and that's why they get stuck.
So, can you break down together? They call it chemistry. So, what do you mean by that?
Most people, when they jump into a relationship, they're looking for that extreme butterfly feeling that everything feels right and you're my soulmate. But what that actually is just a chemical addiction. It's over connecting too fast. And the anxious person saying, I will give you anything you want without any consequences or expectations. And the avoidant person saying, fantastic, I just want to connect with you and give a dopamine binge back and forth for 7 months. And that's their relationship. It feels incredible at the beginning, but that butterfly feeling is wrong. That's actually a warning sign that it's going too fast. You're not supposed to fall into somebody that quickly. It's a very bad predictor for long-term success. You're supposed to build slower over time through oxytocin and serotonin and vasopressin, another bonding hormone. And as you do that, that's what crafts long-term relationships that are stable.
How can we do that though? I feel like that's really hard because like when you're in those like early stages and like you said, like those butterflies are flying, like you can kind of get carried away. And what something else that tends to happen is people create like stories in their head about where they think this is going to go after like date 1 or 2.
You said two things very telling, right? One is they get swept away by their feelings. We don't allow ourselves to get swept away by our feelings. You will have them, but now you need to stop and do true compatibility testing. True compatibility testing means deep level conversations that are not as sexy, but not horrible. It's, hey, look, I'm looking for a long-term committed relationship, and here's what I'm doing already to prep my life to be ready for it. Are you also looking for that? I'd love to talk with you about it. And the second piece of what you said is people make up stories in their head. That's exactly the problem too, is we make up stories and then hope the other person agrees with us and try to wiggle them around and push their buttons to get them to head in that direction too. And that's where a securely attached person is going to sit down and say, hey, look, I actually think I think you're quite wonderful. We've had a couple of good dates here so far. I just want to make sure I'm investing in the right territory. This is what I'm looking for. What are you looking for? If so, what does that look like to you? What are you already doing to build a life toward that direction? How can we do this together? And what conversations do we need to have to make sure we stay on track? And then they build toward that connection. It sounds less sexy for people who need to be absolutely swept away at all times and overwhelmed by their emotions and just flooded with bonding hormones. And that's why those people break up so much.
Yeah, there's this like cliche thing of like the anxious people, like the avoidant people, and like they attract each other. What does it look like when there's like two anxious people or two avoidant people?
It almost never, ever turns into a relationship with two anxious people because they are both flowers sitting there waiting to be pollinated. They have an external locus of control, which says, I never feel safe unless someone is actively flooding me with attention, oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine. I need to be flooded with attention at all times to even know someone's interested. And then I overcommit and overgive everything I have to the other person without expectations. They're not likely to line up. They can't pollinate each other that way. It just doesn't work. So we almost never see two anxiously attached people fitted together. Two avoidant people fitted together usually is let's connect for a little bit. Let's have some casual sex. And then, hey, wore off for me. Thanks, though. I'm going to move on. Very rarely do I see two truly avoidant people form an actual romantic relationship. And usually they're just sort of hanging on until some life circumstance splits them up. And these are the people that will say, yeah, if you ever get sick, I just want to let you know I'm not going to stay for that. And the other one goes, yeah, I understand. And there's very little holding them together because when one splits, the other goes, okay, bye. And they just separate like this. So
The next one is the most attractive trait isn't beauty or status, it's emotional safety.
mm-hmm. Emotional safety is the number one prerequisite for a long-term committed relationship if you're going to maintain it, and especially if you're going to try to raise children or have marriage involved. You must have emotional safety. Now, emotional safety is you being able to speak honestly and transparently with the other person without them getting angry and attacking you or having painful consequences just for the truth. The things you do should have consequences. The things you feel or even desire do not need to have consequences. They should involve calm conversation about how you can get your needs met, what this looks like, what we're doing together, what we're hoping for. There should be transparency and calm. And even again, if you have a conflict or a disagreement, there should be safety there. The other person doesn't pull out a knife and say, okay, now we fight to the death. It should be, okay, we're both a little bit at odds right now. Let's find a way we can both win. That's what emotional safety looks like. It's having discipline. It's also being compassionate and calm with each other.
When someone says, you made me feel that way, what they mean is, I haven't learned to regulate myself yet.
Before this podcast, I was in my group coaching experience, and they brought up this exact tweet, said, Adam, you said this the other day, but how am I supposed to say this to my husband? Look, unless somebody has taken you hostage or is physically harming you, they're not making you feel anything. Your nervous system is responding to something they did, and the level of response in your nervous system is from being dysregulated. It's a trauma response in the amygdala and the limbic system. It's somewhere in there. Yes, they did something, and you should deal with that appropriately, but your emotional response is not their problem or their issue that they have to solve. So instead, you need to take a step back. I am having an emotional response to this. Why am I having an emotional response to this? And then you step forward and say, I don't like this situation because either principles or long-term goals. Those are the challenges. You don't wade in and start screaming about whose feelings are bigger. It's not useful. Now, coming from this, anger is never a primary emotion. It's a secondary emotion. I feel hurt. I feel sad. I feel scared. And you don't care. So I will make you care. And that's what ultimately comes out. So yes, establish that you're working together as a team. Regulate your own emotions. And then have a discussion about the situation. Don't argue about the feelings.
And this next one is pretty similar to this. Most people are addicted to the emotional patterns that once helped them survive. And this is very relevant to what you just said, right? We can become so stuck in our ways.
Our brain is a very, very useful learning computer, but sometimes it learns lessons that are so specific to a circumstance and then generalizes them everywhere to every circumstance to try to stay safe, that it ruins our ability to actually navigate the rest of our world. And that's called trauma. A trauma response is, this is so deadly, dangerous, and scary that I must generalize it everywhere because I don't know how it works yet or what to do about it. Now I will always be afraid every time I encounter these 100 variables that were linked in. Managing that trauma effectively means narrowing it down to 1 or 2 variables, understanding them, building plans around them, and resolving that amygdala response so that we're not afraid of everything. But until we do, we have all those fear traumas cycled into our brain, and we will continue those patterns over and over and over again, whether they're pleasurable or painful. That's all we know.
So what's your tips for someone who's trying to break the pattern? Because I feel like a lot of this stuff is subconscious, like that anxiety you get when someone doesn't text you back, or like that anger that you get when someone says something to you. Like it can almost it feels like you have little control over it. How do we get control over it?
I get this question all the time from my coaching clients. We only gain control, number one, when we become aware that it's even a pattern. And number two, we become aware that it's an abnormal pattern. It's not wrong, you're not broken, but it's a pattern that has formed abnormally. And you're now in an abnormal, constant cycle of trauma and stress. And that's what we call trauma, but we also call it attachment issues when it's focused on human relationships. So fixing that, first, you have to understand it's not the way you should be operating. It's not the healthy mode, it's the stress mode. And number two, that there's another way of being. Most men know their war mode, their stress mode, and that's all they ever feel. They don't know that there's a peace mode that they should spend the majority of their time in, and they don't know how to access this. Then number two, how do I access my peace mode? How do I refuse to engage constantly in chronic stress and enter a peaceful restive state? We actually need relationships for this. We're meant to interlink with other humans, women and men, through vasopressin bonding, which teaches us trust, oxytocin bonding, which makes us feel loved and belonging. That opens up the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode, where we can then generate serotonin in our gut. And then we feel content, belonging, safe, and trusting, and we are integrated fully with the people that we trust at that point. We must be doing this to fully recalibrate, because then and only then are we not dancing for others' approval, running away from relationships, afraid to have conversations, afraid to trust other people. We can be calm and restive in our true natural state.
Hmm. Yeah, and I feel like it's also important to understand that those like feelings and emotions are going to come up, and there's nothing wrong with feeling those emotions, but there is something wrong with if you handle it incorrectly a minute later, 2 minutes later.
That's the thing, is men are so disconnected from each other, and women. We're so disconnected from our ancestors and their knowledge. We can't go anywhere to get solutions. We can't ask anyone what's happening. We can't ask anyone what to do. We can't ask anyone what a relationship should look like. We can't ask anyone how to stop being afraid. Podcasters like yourself are asking those questions of people like me, so that the people at home can get the answers they would never get in their own life. And then moving forward through mentorship, training, all of that, you gather solutions from other human beings, and then you implement them under their guidance the way a child is supposed to, that you didn't get in your childhood. And then you craft an intentional life instead of a trauma-based life. And that's the difference right there.
The next one is your childhood taught you what to expect from love. Now your body keeps trying to relieve it or relive it, even if it hurts.
Mm-hmm. We really only can aspire to the biggest good that we can envision being actual possible for us. If you think that marriage is an absolute miserable experience, and you just go into it closing your eyes and holding your breath and hoping it's not going to be, and you don't know how to build a good marriage, you're going to have a miserable experience. Same in dating, same in friendship, same anywhere. If you just hope, you're doing it wrong. These are skill sets. That's the thing, is all of this are skills. That's trauma that makes you skew sideways on your beliefs, and then it's skills that you didn't learn. And those two factors woven together create a miserable life. When you resolve the traumas, so you're not afraid all the time, so that you can then have the mental clarity to learn and use the skills, now you build a life you actually want. You didn't learn the skills you should have as a kid. It's time to do it as an adult.
The next one is love doesn't hurt. Unresolved trauma in a relationship does.
Everyone always wants to sing songs about how love is so painful and miserable and a horrible experience. It's people impacting each other in negative ways through their painful learned experiences, their trauma, their unresolved issues, and being unreasonable to each other. That's what hurts. It's we can't work through this because one of us is refusing to. That's what hurts. So don't be afraid of love. Just be smart and diligent about understanding if other people, looping back, can bring emotional safety to the relationship. Now, you don't have to be afraid of the relationship. There will be tough times, but it won't be miserable agony because you refuse to work together.
Yeah, I feel like this is relevant now more than ever, because I saw this New York Times article, I want to say like 3 weeks ago, that said that Gen Z is the rejected generation, and that like Gen Z is experiencing more rejection in the dating scene than, or even like in the career wise, than any other generations.
It's actually scarier than that. So the research indicates that among Gen Z individuals who are adults, Gen Z adults have a 65% rate of insecure attachment. And they're also finding that the prevalence of personality disorders in Gen Z has increased from an average of 10%, which society can maintain, to an average of 20% of individuals with personality disorders. So when you add that together, we're looking at an 85% rate in Gen Z of having severe attachment issues, where you have a hard time connecting to others, or personality disorders where you become aggressive and predatory toward others as well, typically, or so disconnected from them that you can't make relationships work. So at least 15% of securely attached individuals in Gen Z, definitely the wrong direction. We definitely want to take it the other direction.
What do you think is the source of this? I mean, you have social media.
That would take me hours to get in. It's the last 121 years of societal breakdown in the West, in America, in Europe, all across the earth, actually since the beginning of World War I. Families are broken apart, but whole generations of men have been lost. The transmission of skills, industrialization, taking people away from their families as well, into 18-hour workdays. Just the vast breakdown of societal norms, of family structures, kith and kin networks, even religious structures, that shattering of those natural bonds where we're supposed to be connected to those around us, and then generational trauma layering in on top of that. You see the silent generation, the greatest generation, the lost generation, the baby boomer generation, the millennials, Gen X and Gen Y, lest we forget them, leading down to Gen Z today. It's a complete destruction of all the transmission pathways of knowledge, love, intimacy, connection, and emotional safety. After 121 years of that, there's not much left. So we need to really rebuild it, because right now people are living in the rubble of a greater civilization. It's just that our machines are keeping us going.
If you were never allowed to have needs as a child, you'll mistake self-neglect for strength.
I'll say this one. Most parenting today is not actual parenting skills. Most parenting today is adapting to trauma and trying to just survive and get through, and then shove your kid into adulthood. That's what most parenting is today. So most parents are trying to manage their own stress levels while telling their kid to shut up and go away, or distract their kid with a tablet, which is why we have tablet toddlers now, and just shut them down. Most kids can't get their needs met because they can't even articulate them without the parents sighing, getting exhausted, telling them to be quiet, giving them a tablet, or just walking away. And it's not that people are bad parents, it's that they don't know how to parent. So then fast forward everybody here today, you were parented probably by traumatized, stressed out, miserable parents who didn't know what to do, barely survived and got through the last several generations. Now you don't know how to ask for your needs because you weren't really allowed to have needs and conversations about needs and how to get them met and collaborate together as a family to meet everybody's needs. You just sort of survived to adulthood, and now you're on your own. And that's the issue. You don't know how to have those conversations to fully collaborate and build an experience together. You've got to learn that.
People think high standards protect them. Often it's just a fear of wearing a mask of control.
100%. A lot of my guys who are avoidantly attached come in, and the woman has to, for me to commit, she has to be 11 out of 10. She has to have this size of boobs and this color hair, and she must speak to me like this and have no expectations whatsoever. And she also has to be independently financially wealthy and work 75 hours a week, so she never speaks to me and only comes over for sex, but she needs to be instantly available. What they're doing is they're crafting an image that protects them from the intimacies of real human relationships, because they feel the other person is going to come in and intrude upon them with unreasonable expectations, like happened in childhood from their caregivers. I was overwhelmed by my caregivers. They didn't listen to me. They put unreasonable expectations on everything. Now I can't connect to anybody through oxytocin. My oxytocin bonding receptors are closed from sympathetic nervous system activation. All I have left is dopamine. So I need you to constantly flood me with dopamine without ever giving me stress cortisol through unreasonable expectations, and I don't trust you, so you're going to stay right over there on the other side of this wall and through the intercom give me endless dopamine until you don't, and then I'm kicking you out. That's why they have those expectations, because they don't understand how love works, and they can't really feel it.
And then once again, also you factor in how easy it is, right, to find someone else. And everyone seems perfect over an app or over that person that you're seeing on like an app or over your phone, like who you're just seeing like the best parts of them, is a lot better than that person you've been dating for 3 weeks who you talk to them, you see their flaws, like you've seen their like stuff that they're weak at, right?
100%. It's you are looking for dopamine, so you either go on Amazon and buy products, you go on porn and do stuff there. You play a video game and do stuff there. You go on Netflix and distract yourself, or you go on one of the dating websites and try to pick out a new partner to have fun with. Like it's all just an endless dopamine binge that distracts us from the pain we experience from low intimacy in our actual human relationships. If we don't know how to connect, we're just looking for the dopamine.
The next one is, you don't need closure from the person who hurt you. You need boundaries and truth from you.
Right. I get this so many times. Women say, well, if he would just explain why he didn't want to stay with me and get married to me, if he would just explain. And I say, if he could just explain and articulate it and give you peace and co-regulate you and help you understand, then he would be the kind of man who wants to get married, and you would not be in this circumstance. So you're looking for something from somebody that you are never going to get, and you're going to stay here stuck until you get what you want. We're looking for what's called co-regulation. regulating our nervous system together, in this case by getting closure by understanding. That is almost never likely going to happen. You need to go to somebody else, process the lessons of what worked. When we have a painful experience, our logical brain diminishes to fuel an emotional agitation. The logical brain is now gone, but our brain asks two questions. What are all the variables that went into me getting hurt, and how do I make sure I never get hurt again? The brain can't process that because it's too upset, and that creates a trauma cycle. Okay, now every variable is dangerous. And again, that's what women and men are looking for in closure. Why did this happen? Go to a professional, process it out, get it managed, understand the variables and how to manage them, and then move forward with appropriate boundaries of, I'm sorry, I don't accept the level of relationships in that area that have that variable because I was hurt before, so I won't accept them anymore. Thank you, but no thank you. That's the process, not running after the other person, begging them for information.
Yeah, and I feel like what people do is when they don't process that emotion healthily when like a relationship ends is they try to process it like you said in their own heads, and they like almost like create stories about the situation that weren't true. They can like have imaginary conversations of like when they run into this person again, this is what they're going to say to them.
Yeah.
And so like not processing it healthfully can just prolong the cycle of misery, I feel like.
Do you understand data node clusters? Data clusters
No.
of data nodes, how the internet. Okay. So data node clusters, let's say Bitcoin or whatever. Every node on the network, it looks like a giant spider web woven together of light. Every node is interlinking with every other node, and it's making decisions and then sharing that data set. So if any of them get corrupted or make an error, they instantly get flooded back through the network and corrected back in the secure area, into the proper area. The human brain is meant to work like a data node cluster across time and space, where we share solutions to data. That's why you and I don't have to reinvent the internet or reinvent fire or reinvent clothing. We can track it across time and space with men and women from the past and even into the future, but also across the earth right now. Okay. Data node clusters of sharing data, but also correcting thoughts and correcting incorrect beliefs. So we are meant to open up and process things with other people verbally and then get their understanding and then correct our internal experience. Now, when you take a data node completely off that cluster, it goes dark. Now, when it is trying to solve problems, it has to reinvent solutions all on its own. And if it makes an error, nothing will ever correct it. This is the human brain removed from the data node cluster that is humanity, and now making compounded errors within itself, that the errors get worse and worse and worse and worse every decision that's made, because now it's acting from faulty data that's incorrect. The longer it goes, the harder it is to reintegrate with the rest, because the more corrections will need to be made to that brain. And that's difficult, but doable. So the faster you can get back into a cluster set, at least with some other humans, and then process those internal inconsistencies better, the faster your brain begins to correct, you gain more solutions, you gain more peace, and your nervous system begins to regulate appropriately. That's how we're supposed to operate.
Next one is avoidants say, I need space, but what they really need is safety to be close.
Yeah. Avoidantly attached people, because they had difficult experiences early on, they don't trust other humans. They don't understand intimacy and safety. They wouldn't call it safety. They'd say peace. They understand that other people are the problem in their relationships, so they stay away from them. Now, they are constantly hypervigilant and scanning everyone around them whenever they're open and connected, which means their sympathetic nervous system is turned on around other people, which blocks their oxytocin receptors. So they can't understand true intimacy with other humans. They understand cortisol stress from being around them, and they understand dopamine to cool their nuclear reactor on the inside. Those are the two mechanisms that they have: stress and dopamine. Boom. Cortisol, dopamine. Now, when they want space, it means someone has stressed me out. I don't believe I can work with them, or I'm stressed out and I don't believe I can co-regulate, and I can't calm myself while I'm tracking other people because I'm exhausted. So I need to pull away into an isolated room and drink alcohol to flood my system with GABA and serotonin to forcibly shut down my reactor. So I get dopamine on binging, and I can shut myself down with chemicals. That's what they understand. What they actually need is to integrate with other human beings appropriately, build secure connection, and then co-regulate to understand the expectations are not here, they're actually here, for healthy people at least, so they can calmly manage it here. Stop being hypervigilant and scanning, calm their sympathetic nervous system response, activate parasympathetic, oxytocin receptors open up, they engage in personal, intimate connection with that human being, verbally, emotionally, physically, everything. And then as they do that, their nervous system calms and regulates. They release GABA, which suppresses cortisol in advance. So they're calmed and steady, and then they feel good. That's what an avoidant person actually needs. It's not what they know how to get.
The next one is you can't outlogic a nervous system trained in chaos. This is very similar to pretty much everything we've talked about so far. I feel like this is like the baseline of everything.
The cap. Yeah. When you are emotionally dysregulated and your nervous system is primed to be stressed out, again, it turns off your prefrontal cortex, which is the judgment center of the brain, and you go into 5-second thinking, maximize pleasure, minimize pain, diminishes the logical function on the left side brain, really pulls away your frontal lobe in totality, and diminishes your capacity for having these logical discussions. Then with the scraps that are left, you're trying to reason with your emotional brain that's fully disconnected. No, we shouldn't do that but your logic is gone. The emotional brain doesn't care about logic. It cares about proof. It cares about biased decisions it has already made, and it is demanding safety. Back to emotional safety at the beginning. It's demanding emotional safety and a pathway to get it and keep it. So your emotional brain launches. Anybody who's ever told a girlfriend or a wife to just calm down, or anybody who's tried to problem solve with someone who's upset, has seen this effect in working out. Okay. Now, if you are alone inside your own head and not working with anyone else to manage you, you get locked into these things too, and you're not emotional. However, because your prefrontal cortex turns off, and your limbic system fires off, it activates the reptilian survival area of your brain. You will feel logical when you're in the middle of a fight with somebody else. You will feel like you're being calm and steady and that you're making good decisions. You're making catastrophically bad decisions about your long-term goals and your family and your connections and your relationships, but you'll feel in the moment like you're regulated. And that's the trap.
Yeah, when I think, even in my life, when I think about the things I regret the most, it was decisions or things that were said when I was emotional instead of logical and letting some time pass. And a lot of people, this can relate to anything in life where when you're in those first emotional stages and then some time passes, and then once you calm down, you look at the situation completely differently than you did
Yeah.
2 hours ago when you were freaking out.
I want you to think about this, okay? There's a kingdom with a king, and he's on his throne, and someone comes in and goes, "King, there's a really dangerous situation, and we have to navigate it carefully in the best possible way." And he goes, "Hold on." And he gets slammingly drunk as fast as possible, and then takes his 3 wisest advisors and puts tape over their mouth and locks them in the dungeon so they can't speak to him, and goes, "Okay, now I'm going to make my decision." And that's essentially the human brain with trauma responding to a dangerous situation. You have locked away the parts of your brain responsible for advising you long term, the parts of your brain that have been cultivated to make wise decisions, and you're getting drunk on hormones that are going to make you very foolish. Now you make a lifelong decision. This is the worst possible time to make any decisions. When you're that stressed out, you gather a little bit of information if you can, but even your memory is impaired. When you're that stressed, what you need to do is regulate your nervous system and get back to a calm place where your systems come back online, and then you can gather appropriate information, and then long term, you can begin to make a solution and make a decision. But it needs to be done with your advisors out of the dungeon with tape off their mouths while the king is sober instead of drunk.
Yeah, and okay, one or two of those bad decisions when you're emotional won't destroy your life, but if you don't train that, or maybe actually that's actually a good point, is that sometimes it can, but when it's consistent and you're consistently making emotional decisions, that can completely destroy your life, right?
That's what leads to people who say, "I have no control in my life because I get so emotionally sparked and I sabotage it. Other people are managing my life for me. They're controlling me. I hate it. I just want someone to make me feel better." This is why the average American now spends an average of 8 years of their life on escapist entertainment. This is why we see drug epidemics going up, so just numb out. This is why 1 in 4 American women is now on psych meds to try to manage her anxiety or depression cycles. This is why we have the suicide epidemic of young men that are just gone because they have no more hope. This is why. It's because every time they try to make a decision, their brain just fries and they make the decision that's going to lead them to more pain without meaning to. Even that just means don't have the conversations. Don't lean into the connections. Stay at home. Hide. Right? The decisions we make, the little ones every day that stack up into a million decisions that keep us isolated and alone. Yes, it's not just the big explosive ones, it's the little ones too.
The next one is secure love doesn't feel like a high, it feels like home.
Correct. So, secure love and connection feels boring to people who are looking for the overwhelming nervous system frying experience of true love at first sight, right? The people who have a new soulmate every 3 months, right? Every 90 days, you got a new soulmate for life. Eh, Secure love looks boring because it begins slower, but it's a lot like finding that perfect co-founder to build the incredible company with. The goal is not to feel so overwhelmingly passionate at the beginning that you make stupid drunk king decisions. The goal is to build into that connection and that intimacy through great conversation, through shared joy, through testing conflict and making sure you're the right match. And then you build something that brings so much joy and fulfillment and passion. The joy and fulfillment and passion is what comes from what you're building together and then sharing that experience together. Then you bond through vasopressin, which is that trust hormone. Then you bond through oxytocin, which is the intimacy hormone. Now you have room for all those things lifelong, and your capacity for them is greater. And then you saturate with serotonin and dopamine at every achievement you unlock together appropriately. So now you renew honeymoon phases over and over and over. You have a new honeymoon every year, and you are intimately bonded for life. And that's the rewarding cycle of true monogamy. It is an incredible experience that cannot be matched, but can only be built in a secure, calm fashion. It's not the mad, insane rush that people are usually looking for.
What's your advice to someone who may be dating someone right now and they don't know if this is the one or not? How do you determine, because that's a popular term that's thrown out, is like the one. How do you know if like this is someone that you should be in a committed relationship with?
Sit down and make a list of all the questions you are either afraid to ask or haven't bothered to ask yet because you hope you'll figure them out eventually. Sit down and make a list of all those conversations you should be having, and then sit down together as a couple and have those conversations point blank. This doesn't mean you're angry and interrogating each other. You have a good, friendly discussion about it that's fun, but you actually have all the conversations that for one reason or another you've been avoiding. And that will show you if you are compatible or not. And then dig on their answers. Ask more questions. Ask follow-ups. Figure it out as a couple. You're going to have some conflict. That's good. Navigate it together and see what you guys do when you have that conflict. That's the test. Same thing as if you were trying to build a co-founder relationship. You don't avoid every difficult conversation and then sign the contract in blood that we will build this lifelong process and thing together.
The next one is most men don't fear intimacy. They fear being punished for opening up.
Yeah. Most men were punished for opening up as children. They were punished. Dad, I want a cookie. Shut up. Get away from me. I don't have time for you. Hey, Dad, can we spend time together? No, go over there. Hey, Mom, I'm really sad right now. Well, sweetheart, we're all sad. So why don't you go do something about it? Why don't you go play with your toys? Right? They're used to being pushed away, shut up and told to go away. And when there's a conflict, they were told that they should just suck it up because I'm your dad. That's why. Or, hey, kid, that's not how it works. I'm your parent. So then they go into adulthood after 18 years of that training, many of them with the belief that marriage doesn't work and families break up anyway at the drop of a hat. And now they go out into the world and they're supposed to be open, transparent, and magical, lovey, fluffy feelings all the time. And that's not how it works. You need to connect to somebody that has proven, documented trustworthiness so that you can then have those experiences with them and share your needs with those human beings who are going to reciprocate, share their needs with you. You enter into what's called a negotiation-driven relationship, not transactional, but where you both get your needs met and for mutual fulfillment, and you care for each other with a greater purpose that you're both trying to achieve. One last thing I'll say is this on that topic is most couples are just together to give each other good feelings until one of them dies. And that's the whole purpose of their marriage. Let's give each other good feelings till one of us dies. It'll go great. But eventually the feelings end. There's difficulty. There's challenge. You have to renew the feelings. It takes work, and you can. And it's amazing again. I've been married 16 years. And I have 5 kids with my wife. The renewed honeymoons are incredible. But eventually the good feelings do get challenged. Now, you have to have a greater purpose that's keeping the two of you together. And you have to have a negotiation-driven relationship of, hey, my needs have changed a bit. Here's what they are for me to be sustainable and fulfilled and continue on our pathway together. I will need this. Can we make that happen? Yeah, we can, but here's what I'll need to do on my side. And here's a capacity adjustment I'll need. Can you also help me with that so that we can take care of each other? Co-founders, right? In a business. Okay, let's take care of each other that way. Let's move forward. Boom. That's how it goes.
I like this one a lot. It wasn't love bombing you responded to. It was finally being seen until they dropped the act.
Yeah. Love bombing, for anyone at home not following along just yet, love bombing is when you come in, you oversaturate the other person with attention, kindness, visions of the future. It's the romance and flowers and hot sex. It's everything as fast as possible without actual substantial movement. Love bombing is you come on like an absolute steamroller and run the other person over, and their heart is so flooded that they react with more love and intimacy towards you because they feel so overwhelmed. Securely attached people actually back off from this because it feels overstimulating and dangerous, because it is. But the person who's receiving it, usually an anxiously attached person, has never truly felt acceptable or worthwhile or good enough in their life. And so they wait for someone to come along and make them feel that. And that's who they devote themselves to. You made me feel good and safe, and I know you won't abandon me. So please take everything I have and just keep me for the rest of my life. They feel seen, they feel heard, they feel validated. They finally feel like somebody cares about them for a moment.
The next one is you attract what you're ready for and you sabotage what you're afraid to keep.
I'm a big advocate of saying that everything is a skill set. Everything is a skill set. You can learn any skill. But if you're not ready for an intimate relationship because your skills aren't matched up, if your regulation skills of your own emotional experience, the trauma cycle, is not ready, communication skills, bonding skills, compatibility testing skills, relationship skills, if those are not in place, you're going to show that by overcompensating in other areas, love bombing, having no boundaries, whatever it is. You're going to attract people that are attracted to what you're offering. You're marketing yourself for lonely, desperate guys. Lonely, desperate guys will find you. Guys, if you're out there marketing yourself to just try to have any woman adopt you for a moment, you're going to find women who just want to adopt you and use you for a moment. That's usually like more personality disorders types, which in turn gives rise to the red pill movements. That's a whole other conversation. But yes, you attract what you are ready for, because that's the conversations you're going to have and the compatibility testing you're going to be asking for. If you're just out here saying, hey, can anyone just help me make a quick buck? Let's co-found something for a week. That's what you're going to attract.
Daycare has been shown to harm the ability to bond and feel secure, especially for small babies.
So the longest studies we have over decades and decades and decades from actual world governments provably demonstrates that daycare is one of the most harmful, destructive, terrible things we can do to young children and infants especially, because they bond to their caregivers and compete against strangers for this stranger's attention. Strange children, strange caregivers, and then the caregivers change and fluctuate. And then mom is gone all day at work and comes home exhausted, has almost no time or energy to plug into the child. Now the child is also losing that connection. So of course this is destructive to our children. Of course it is. The child also can smell when someone is related to mom and thereby feel safe. If the child smells strangers, a fear response actually begins and they become placating, what we call fawning, to try to please everyone around them so they don't get killed. Like this is a normal infant behavior, especially among apes, which are the primates, which we're tagged in. They're very similar. So we smell that these people don't care about us and are not likely to actually have our best interests at heart. So we fawn toward them and we're approval seeking and withdrawn so they don't pick us up and smash us on a rock like an angry gorilla would. And that's what infants grow up with. So of course, putting them into those daycare structures where you minimize time with mom or dad, very little bonding there, parents are exhausted. It's not usually the parents' fault. It's usually the larger societal structures, lacking kith and kin networks where they can smell that you're the same as mom, hear your voice, get used to you, and then be around you. If grandma is watching you, it's different from daycare, by the way. All of these structures we're supposed to be afraid. That's the thing. We are reacting appropriately to bad behaviors and bad environments. All of these things, you guys, are appropriate adaptations that are built into us on purpose. These are not abnormal. These are not unnatural things. These are natural procedures that are playing out because of our environment.
Wow. Male depression is nearly always a result of learned helplessness, but health providers treat it like female depression and try to make the men feel loved instead of powerful.
Everybody else understands that men need purpose. Even our brain. Our brain detects problems in the back and immediately lunges forward to try to solve the problem. When we can't, we get frustrated and we experience cortisol and pain. And then over time, we develop learned helplessness and say, I'm helpless and I hate it. I can't manage my pain, which leads into increased anxiety, which eventually falls off a cliff into depression as our nervous system amps up but can't handle it. We crash into the dark side of our parasympathetic nervous system, which is depression. We crash down and then we start to give up. And as this gets worse and hopelessness sets in, all of a sudden there's suicidal ideation right there. This is how the male brain operates. And so depression is a response to the environmental issues that we're having and because we can't solve the problems. This is how men work. This is how our brain operates.
The next one is people are more likely to take a pill for years that they don't understand and don't think will actually help them than they are to attempt even one uncomfortable conversation that could save their life.
I worked with a lot of people back in my years of clinical therapy. I worked with a lot of people. Some of them were on 27 different medications. And when I'd ask, what do these do? They'd say, I don't know. My doctor just said it's going to help me feel better. That was their answer. 27 medications. Okay. Now, a lot of these medications were charged through county insurance, which is taxpayer funded, so the person doesn't pay. And a lot of those structures were being charged $1,000 per pill. So $27,000 per day. This is a human farming scheme. The American psychology model is a disease-based model. You have a disease. What do we do with diseases? We medicate them. Most people are treating their issues as if they have diabetes. I am sad. I have emotional diabetes. Where is my insulin? Because most people feel so utterly helpless and afraid, either anxiously attached, or they don't believe anyone else on earth will ever actually work with them, avoidantly attached, so they don't have conversations because they believe it's hopeless. It's better just take 27 different drugs every day and hope something somehow changes for you, that someone somewhere will rescue you with medication. We believe in that more than we believe in the power to make our change in our life.
Wow. Most people in therapy are there because the people of their life who actually needed therapy refused to get it.
Most of us who have issues with attachment issues, we were raised with them by caregivers who didn't know how to take care of us. It doesn't mean your caregiver was an evil, awful person. It means your caregiver had trauma, didn't know the skills, didn't know the parenting skills we talked about that have been lost since World War I, didn't know how to interact with you, didn't even know how to get their own needs met. And you grew up inside of that. And now here you are. The people that were supposed to raise and train you didn't know what to do. Sometimes they were awful. Sometimes they were just confused and afraid. So yes, people going to therapy are usually there because the people who put them in therapy didn't go to therapy, didn't get training, didn't talk to a priest, didn't talk to their family, didn't build the structures that would have taken care of them. This is why it's our responsibility to make sure we are taking care of what's appropriate on the inside so we're not harming other people.
The last one I have here is most cases of depression are a natural response to our broken society.
Our society is so beyond broken that word doesn't even do it justice anymore. Our machines are keeping us going. The systems our ancestors built allow us to continue to live, and that's why we don't recognize the full societal collapse we are in. Attachment issues exist for broken, horrific situations where you can't form human bonds, so you have to placate others or take resources from them. Catastrophic situations. The fact that we now have an 85% rate of attachment issues combined with personality disorders, that, guys, I can't even begin to articulate to you how deadly and dangerous the situation is with that going on. That is not a functioning society. That is, the volcano has erupted, it has wiped out most of your village, and you are all dead, and there are raiders coming in who are going to kill and eat you and maybe enslave the rest of you, and winter is setting in, and there's very few resources, so you have to fight or placate just to stay alive with the survivors. That's what that looks like, and that's our society now, except we have the internet, we have Pornhub, we have Amazon, we have DoorDash. Our systems are keeping us alive, even as our culture is falling apart so badly that our systems are screaming at us.
Are there any that I missed that you think would be good to touch on? Maybe like a rule for life?
One rule for life. I will say this. We live in a post-familial system. Post-familial system. We are not post-familial creatures. We are hunter-gatherers. We have not even adapted to the concept of the Neolithic Revolution 12,000 years ago, that we can grow surplus of grain. We don't even understand what to do with surplus of grain, resources yet. Who gets it? Who guards it? How to share it? We can't even manage that yet. Now we have obliterated our family systems, and we are not meant for this. So we are living in a world that is not only not optimized for us, but is actively destructive for us on a daily basis. The new wealth going forward is not going to be money or attention. The new wealth going forward is going to be healthy human relationships, securely attached human relationships that allow your system to function biologically appropriately through oxytocin, vasopressin, serotonin, and GABA. You need those things in your system appropriately so your nervous system is regulated. Then you become hyperproductive, safe, healthy, and fulfilled. Without them, your testosterone or estrogen plunges, your fertility dies off, your immune system flares out of control, and you can't function hardly anymore. You get autoimmune issues. You have heart disease, cancer, or stroke from 45 to 55 and die young, catastrophically painfully, and the entire time you live low quality of life, miserable, so that you then have to run away for 8 years of your life into escapist entertainment. That's how people are living. It is only avoidable through fixing your attachment and building healthy, secure human relationships, which is why I have hyper-focused into it to become the attachment specialist. That's what we must be doing. That is the wealth going forward. You can't biohack your way out of this. You are a social mammal. You must live as a social mammal if you want to function appropriately.
So my last question, and I asked you this when I had you on a year ago, so I'm interested to see how similar or different it is. If you had 1 minute with your younger self, what would you tell him?
Get tired of your own bullshit faster. Because the things we tell ourselves inside our head that keep us from reaching out and having real legitimate conversations with other people about boundaries, about needs, about desires, about mutual fulfillment, that right there is what keeps us stuck. The stories we tell ourselves inside our head, the fears we give into, that's it. When we move past that, we have to be in enough pain to move past that, depression and misery. When we can move past those things, we begin to thrive, and other people see us and want the same experience, so they will connect with us. You attract the people who don't want bullshit when you stop bullshitting yourself and other people.